Hi, I'm Ken Sterling, and this is Sports Media 101. We're going to talk about how to get hired. This is kind of the unseemly part of the sports media business, and you don't really even need to get hired, and that's the first lesson. You can do whatever you want to do for yourself with social media. You're not going to be able to monetize it immediately, but eventually you can make decent money providing unique content on your own channel. But let's talk about how you get hired at another place, how you get a manager to hire you. What is really important, and this again, like I said, is the unseemly part, the underbelly of the business that frankly I don't care for very much, is you got to know somebody. That's the bottom of the line. And I'll give you a great story about knowing people and how I could have done I could have taken a different tack in my career when I was in Chicago. I was in Chicago until 1993. And I worked at WMAQ, All News 67, which was an awesome place to learn about radio and an awesome place to work. I learned a lot there. And one of the guys who worked there was named Ron Gleason, and he worked in sports. And a guy named Mike Greenberg was one of my contemporaries as a production assistant. And he kind of worked in sports. And we were hired at roughly the same time and left at roughly the same time. I left to take a full-time job because I had a wife and a son, and I felt ridiculous making $8 an hour for 16 hours a week when it looked like nobody who was full-time as a production assistant was ever going to leave. And so what in the world am I going to do? This is not sustainable. So I left and moved on to a place called Teacham. Anyway, Mike Greenberg then, at about the same time, was just flat taken off the schedule. They didn't fire him. They just gave him no hours. But Mike had done a really good job while he was there, and he had gotten to know the guy I talked about, named Ron Gleason. Simultaneous to that, Ron left WMAQ to start, at that time, it was AM 820, The Score. It was a daytimer. And so Mike Greenberg, I talked to him, and he said, what do I do? Like, I'm not getting any hours. I said, I don't know, but, not having any hours is kind of like not having a job. They're trying to tell you something, and so I'd go do something else. So he called Ron Gleason, and Ron was looking for a guy to be, and Mike had done his job really, really well and had gotten to know Ron, and Ron was putting together the staff for The Score. And it was already up and running, but it was a daytimer, and so Greeny went to The Score and became kind of the guy who covered Bulls games or White Sox games or Cubs games or the Western Open out at Butler National at the time. And what they needed, daytimers work like this. Not to get too, behind the curtain in radio, but a daytimer means you're only on during the day. And because sunrise and sunset kind of expand and contract based upon the seasons, sometimes you're going on the air in Chicago at 5 in the morning, and sometimes you're going on the air in Chicago at 8:15-ish in the morning or 7:45. So you don't need the same schedule month to month or season to season. And Mike was good enough that Ron put him on Morning Drive during the months that they needed a Morning Drive host. And he did well, and what do you know about that? Now he's on Get Up. Before that, he was on Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio, and ESPN Radio launched their 24/7 service. Mike was right there. And all because he had done a really good job for Ron Gleason in a role that there was no applause for Mike Greenberg in doing what he did at WMAQ. In fact, like I said, management just took him plumb off the schedule. I never felt the need. I don't like, all the... all the networking that goes on. Like, I'm not a networker. I don't glad hand. I'm not good at it. And so I didn't. And you know what? It might have benefited me to do that and get to know somebody. I had an internship at WGN in Chicago that was really, really good, and got to know Chuck Swirsky and Dwayne Statz and Randy Minkoff and Wayne Larrabee and Davey Nelson. Davey Nelson in the sports office told me how to get a good jump off first base, which sadly was a little bit too late for me to actually employ as a baseball player. Davey Nelson had been the first base coach for the Chicago White Sox in the mid-'80s. but I loved it there, and I loved it at MAQ, but I didn't do a lot of, I'll give you another one. Mitch Rosen, who we talked about last week, the guy who still has a whole lot to do with running the score in Chicago. Mitch, like, he was the intern that followed me at WGN, and a great guy, wonderful guy. And so he got a job out of his internship to produce Eddie Schwartz's show. It was an overnight show on WGN, and it was a job that I wanted nothing to do with because I had a wife and a son, and we needed to have some kind of a life. And I didn't want to be at the radio station like from 10 at night until 5 in the morning or whatever. That didn't seem like much of a life, so I didn't take that job. Mitch did. And Mitch, boop, 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 running the score, and has done a great job doing that. And that's the way this business works. You put in your time, you say yes. I'll give you another one, and this has to do with me, Michael Grady. Michael Grady in Indianapolis. You know how he got his first job in professional radio? He called me. He was a student at Vincennes University studying media. He called and said, I'd like a job as a board op at WIBC. Nobody called and asked for a job as a board operator at WIBC ever. Once we launched The Fan, everybody wanted to work in sports talk. Like we couldn't hire all the people who wanted to be interns for us at The Fan, but the internships at WIBC we rarely filled because people didn't want them. They didn't want to work in news talk. They wanted to work in sports talk. At any rate, Michael calls me, and so I pick up the phone, and he explains his situation. I said, I'll tell you what, give me a call Tuesday at 3. Can you do that? And he said yes. And I hung up. And it was a test to see if he could tell time and keep an appointment. Because if you can do that, you know what? We can train the rest with board operation. We can teach you how to be a board operator in a couple hours, and you're going to be fine at it. But you got to be able to show up on time, or my phone rings and somebody says, hey, my relief isn't here and I got to go. And then I got a problem, and we can't have that. So Tuesday at 3, I wrote in my book, Michael Grady going to call, and I sat in the chair and I waited. Clock hit 3, boom, there's the phone. It's Michael Grady. I said, okay, come on in, you're hired. Hired him to run the board from 3 to 7 in the afternoon, then hired him to run Network Indiana Sports Talk with Bob Lovell. And he just kept saying yes to everything. And so when we launched The Fan, Tom Severino, who was my boss, said, okay, who do you hire? Who's your first hire? I said, Michael Grady. Like, Michael's going to be my executive producer. He does everything well. He is a versatile guy. He can be our imaging voice. He'll do everything, and he'll do it at a high level. And he is going to be indispensable on our very, very small but very, very important staff. And Tom said, okay, go. So we hired Michael, and he did great work. And again, just kept saying yes, wound up being a co-host with Joe Stasiak in middays, and then went to the Yes Network, and now he's doing play-by-play for the Minnesota Timberwolves radio network. How about that? You keep saying yes. The commonality among all these people is that they respected their relationships, and they said yes to everything. If you're the kind of a person who is good at building relationships and will say yes to everything, you got a great chance to build a successful career in media. You just got to get a hold of the decision makers, and it's really not that very hard. Here's what I would do. If you're in Indianapolis or whatever city, and you want to work at the Sports Talk, and the Sports Talk, it also owns, the company that owns the Sports Talk owns a News Talk, call the News Talk hirer and say, I want to be a board operator. They will hire you. You will make your bones as a board operator for the News Talk, and you will get to know the people at the Sports Talk, and you will get to know them well enough that they are going to hire you to be a board operator for them, and or probably a producer simultaneously, because they don't separate those duties, at least not here, not Market 41. That's how you get started in radio. But like I said in the beginning, you don't need a job to do the work. If you want to do the work, and you want to learn how to do the work, and you want to learn how to perform for a camera, or you want to learn how to perform in audio, what you need is repetition, 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 repetition. over and over again. Do that job. You don't need to have a job in order to do the work. Do the work. Make good friends. Those friends are going to help you if you help them. Say yes to everything. There's a lesson. We'll talk to you next week.